Superb. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for joining in, and a very warm welcome to you all for this webinar that talks about self-efficacy. Of course, all of us are here to help our students grow and succeed. And today we're going to talk about self-efficacy, that is the need for any individual to succeed. I'm Ruchira Banka. I'm the Principal Educational Consultant at Chimminley and your host for the session today. I've been an educator for around 19 years now. I've led the CBSE, the Cambridge, and the IB curricula at various stages of my professional career. I wish to begin today with introducing Shiminli to you. Shimin is a Japanese term that means citizen, and we are on a mission to create global citizens. Shiminli is a one-stop platform where you would find solutions to deliver skill-based education into your classrooms. Our facilitators are based across the globe who would come and partner with you in taking this journey of life skills education in your day-to-day teaching practices. Shiminli facilitators deliver these lessons to school students from grades 1 to 12 based on a well-structured curriculum inspired by the Harvard, UNESCO, the World Economic Forum, and so on. Many of you have been a part of our webinars in the past, and we see this community growing. And today we've invited Ms. Susan as our guest speaker. Hi, Susan. Thank you for dropping in. Susan has worked in higher education with international students studying in the United States for 10 years. She currently serves as a Director of International Students and Scholars Office at Clark University at Massachusetts. Susan manages the daily operations of the International Students and Scholars Office. She advises international students, scholars, and faculty while overseeing university compliance with federal immigration regulations. She grew up in a small town in New Hampshire, dreaming about traveling the world and experiencing different ways of life. Her international journey took her to England for a gap year before attending the Boston University to study international relations. While an undergraduate student, Susan decided to study abroad in Turkey and Morocco. After graduation, she spent 4 years teaching English as a foreign language in Morocco and working on her Arabic skills. Upon her return to the United States, she realized that intercultural skills and interest in education could be the foundation of a lifelong career for her. She worked in immigration advising and international student support at several higher education institutions in Boston, while earning a master's degree in communication management from Emerson College. In Jan 2020, she made her move to the central Massachusetts to join Clark. She's now pursuing a doctoral studies in educational leadership. Her experience and expertise is what could help all of us today on how, as educators, we can prepare our students for success in universities abroad. Today's webinar will present the latest research findings on how self-efficacy, the belief that one can succeed, contributes to success. Universities. We will discuss different strategies to help prepare students to excel academically, professionally, and socially during the international university experience. Without further ado, I would like all of us to welcome our esteemed speakers for today's session. Susan, stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Ruchira. This is really wonderful, and thank you so much to all of the audience today. And I hope that you'll be more than an audience, that you will also be participants in the conversation. We're all educators here, I believe. So I'm hoping that we can all learn from each other as we go over this really important topic. I'm really excited to share this with you and to have this opportunity. So thanks to Shiminli for finding me and inviting me today. It's exciting to connect what I am working on in my doctoral program, which focuses on student success and what international students need to really get the most out of their education in the United States. And then my daily work, which is with international students at a mid-sized university. So before I get started with the main topic, I do want to share just a little bit about my institution and where I am coming from, because I think that will help you understand why this topic is so important to me and really a passion of mine. So I work at Clark University. It's a quite old institution. As you can see here in this photo, it has really that classic New England, US campus feel, the old buildings. But really what makes Clark so special is the people. And we have a wonderful community of students of around 3,000 undergraduate and graduate students, and a very, very international population. About 6.5% of our undergraduate students are international students, and then even more, about closer to 50% of our graduate students are international. So it's very diverse. I work with more than 1,000 international students from more than 60 countries around the world, which is just really, really exciting. It brings a very diverse perspective to the campus. And we really specialize in having small classes with just about 9 students per every faculty member, which I think makes it a very special place for students who really want to get a hands-on experience and really engage in their education. They're not going to big lecture halls. They're really having these small discussion-based classes. And we have many, many different programs across multiple schools. So arts and sciences, where we have a lot of STEM programs, our School of Management, and our School of Design and Technology. And it's, you know, a really highly ranked institution. So just wanted to kind of share this context of where I am and the types of students that I work with. You know, Clark really looks for students that are going to be successful and that have the skills that they need in order to do well in their classes and to prepare for their careers. So what you're going to learn today, let me just go over a brief agenda. We're going to set out the objectives, and then I hope at the end we can go back to those objectives and say, check them off and say, yes, you know, you covered these topics and you have a good understanding of what I'm hoping you'll get out of this presentation. We're going to spend some time talking about what US universities are looking for. And by that, I mean when students are on campus. So I do not work in admissions, so I am not going to talk about test scores or the TOEFL or Duolingo scores. I'm going to talk about the things Schminley focuses on, which is skills and sort of the abilities that students have internally, not showing on a paper test score necessarily, but what's going to show up in the classroom and on campus. And those things are very important to add on to those test scores that, you know, admissions might be looking at. I'm going to talk about what success is in the US context, which may be a little bit different from where you are coming from and your background. So we'll talk really specifically about the US context. So US higher education and how we train our students in the US and what we're looking for. We're going to talk about some of the challenges that international students might face when they're studying abroad. And then we're going to get into this key concept of self-efficacy. And I'm going to explain how self-efficacy is important to student success. I'll give you some tips that you can bring into your classroom if you're teachers or into your work with students. And then we should have plenty of time for discussion, and we can do that either in the chat or it's a smaller group today, so unmuting yourselves and participating also I think could be very welcome. So let's get started here. So the objectives of this session, number 1, gain an understanding of skills students need to succeed in university abroad, and I would say specifically in the United States. So that's goal number 1 for this session. Goal number 2 is gaining an understanding of what self-efficacy is and why it's so important for student success. So we'll get into the definition, we'll talk about what it means and why it's so important. And then also, I hope you will leave today with some ideas for how you can promote and help grow self-efficacy in your students. Okay, so higher education can feel like a maze. And students may wonder, what does my school expect of me? What am I going to need to do when I get here? And it can be very scary, especially for students who are traveling around the world to come to a new place for their education. Where I live in New England, in Massachusetts, we have these corn mazes. So we have farmers, they grow these huge fields of corn. And then in September and October, people come to the cornfields and they try to wander through the maze. And so that's what it can feel like for students. They're wandering, they're not sure where to go. Do they go right? Do they go left? And so they may be confused. And so what I'd like you to do now is imagine you're entering the maze with your students and put into the chat, if you can, some ideas about what you think universities want from their students. So what are they looking for? What are the skills, the attributes? So you can put this kind of into the chat. You know, for example, we talked about this. You could put in high test scores. Is that what students are looking for? So kind of put your ideas in. What do universities want? Great. Creative thinking skills, independent study, able to self-manage. That's great. Aptitude, skills. I loved adaptability. Great. Good communication skills, critical thinking skills, ability to manage stress, time management, rational thinking, collaboration, practical experience, self-management. These are great. To be able to think, analyze, autonomous learners, creative thinking skills, problem solving, global thinking skills. Yeah, this is all really good. Commitment. Okay. Ability to handle change. Absolutely. These are great. Willingness to attend office hours. It's like you saw my slides. This is fantastic. That's great. You know, the office hours is an interesting one. Sometimes I have students and I have to explain to them what office hours are. They don't know what it is. And I'm like, no, you need to go. You need to go to office hours. I didn't really do much of that as an undergraduate, but when I was in graduate school, I really learned that was the key to building good relationships with faculty and doing well in my classes. Self-learning. Yeah, we don't like to spoon feed here in the US. To be resilient. These are all fantastic. It's a great group. So let's go on here. Yeah, so US universities, right? Once they admit students, they're looking for students that are going to participate in class, especially at a university like Clark, where I am. The classes are small. You cannot sit back and, you know, rely on your test scores. Participation is so important, and it's usually part of the grade, sometimes as high as 20%. So attending class is not enough. Coming prepared, doing the readings, ready to discuss is very, very important. Participate in extracurricular activities. So the US university is a very rich ecosystem. It's almost like being in a small town where there's a dining hall, there's shops, there's cafes, the library, and then there are rich after class opportunities. So being in clubs is very important. You know, for example, at Clark University, there's the International Students Club, and every year they put on this beautiful performance of dances from around the world. And they work on doing these dances throughout the entire year. There's salsa dancing, there's STEM clubs, video game clubs, and really part of the experience is participating in these activities. So you really have to think about U.S. university life, especially at the undergraduate level, as more than academics, but they all connect together. But for successful students, they need to be doing lots of different things at the same time and having different, sometimes competing priorities. Students are expected to know their resources. So we spend a lot of time at the beginning of the year at orientation, letting students know what their resources are. So there's the Academic Advising Center, there is tutoring, there are mental health services, physical health services. So there's many, many, many different offices. It's like a maze to get to know campus and where to go if you have a question. And students are expected to know where their resources are. This came up in the comments. Take initiative. Students need to be able to read their syllabus, which lays out their assignments that they need to do, and they need to take initiative to get that work done. They need to be able to operate independently because no one is going to wake them up in the morning to tell them to get to class. That's just not going to happen unless, you know, mom or dad is calling to wake them up, but the professors are not going to do that. So they have to manage their own schedule, which can be a big change. They may have a day where they don't have classes. Does that mean that that student can take the day off and sleep all day and play video games? No, that's important time. They need to be getting their work done. So that's where the time management comes in, which I think someone mentioned in the chat as well. You know, they have to know how to manage their time. And I did some academic coaching last year, and I worked with a student who just, you know, I said, well, what's your plan for the week? And he's like, I don't know. I just kind of do my work when I do my work. And I said, no, that's not good. And we actually made a schedule for him. On Monday, you're going to work on your history class from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. That's when you're going to do your homework for that class. On Wednesdays, this is the class you're going to work on. And we built out a whole schedule for him. Just to help him start to develop that independence and those skills with scheduling and time management. Critical thinking skills, okay? You cannot just take in information and put it back out on the test page. You have to be able to interact with complex ideas and form your own opinions, but not just have your own opinion, be able to show why you have that opinion based on research, based on the texts that you're reading. So really high level thinking is expected at U.S. universities. Students also need to learn how to ask for help. So to go to office hours, to get a tutor, for example. That was another thing I was always telling my student that I coached, to go to the writing center, which will look at your paper and help you with your paper before you have to turn it in to your professor. And then finally, and to be honest, this is a challenge for me. I don't always like to work in groups. That was really hard in graduate school. I like to do my own thing, but working well in groups is critical. And so students may have 20% of their grade as a group project in a class. And so they need to be able to negotiate in a group who is going to complete what, how to complete projects together. And that's really, really important. And I think we focus on that so much in the US university system because when you get into the workforce, you don't work alone. You have to work in teams. You have to work together. And so there's a lot of focus on that. And that can be really hard, especially for international students. If maybe they're the only international student and everybody else is a US student, that can be really difficult. So that's what universities want. It's a big ask. It's a big transition. And so preparing as soon as possible is really important. So now that we know what universities want, how do universities define success? And I kind of break this down into 3 areas because it's more than just the grades, right? The university experience is preparing you to be successful in life, and life has lots of different pieces to it. So number 1, academic, right? Obviously, you have to get a certain GPA or you're not going to graduate. So you've got to make the grades. Social, and this piece is really important and can really trip up international students. They need to put themselves out there and develop rich social lives and a network of peers to support them. And that is just so important. Building a network is critical to university success and success beyond university. And for international students, they kind of have to start from scratch because they may not know anybody when they arrive on campus. So building those friendships is so important right from the beginning. And then finally, professionals. So are students graduating with the right skills and experience to land a good job? And so that means developing skills, but also participating in internship opportunities. Every university in the US has some type of internship opportunity, and students should really be engaging in that, especially for international students who have to learn US work culture from the ground up. They may not know much about how work is different in the US, and so that's another barrier for students. So we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but these are the challenges for international students. So I'm setting up the challenges, and then we're going to get to self-efficacy and how self-efficacy can help students overcome these challenges. So language barriers. And I know, for example, in South Asia, students are learning English right away. So English skills are very high for many students, but students maybe didn't practice using English with Americans and the way Americans speak and the slang that Americans might use. So there still can be some language challenges, even for students coming in with really high English skills and high TOEFL scores. Academic challenges. The US higher education context is very focused on a lot of reading and writing. Every student has to take writing courses. And that may be difficult to write, those papers. Social and cultural differences, different assumptions, different ways of communicating can cause challenges. Discrimination. Unfortunately, there are some people in the United States that may discriminate against people who look different or sound different. And so that can be a challenge for students. And that's more out in the community, not as much on campus. I think on campus, people are a little bit more welcoming, but sometimes discrimination can happen. Financial difficulties as well. It's a big investment to send a student to study abroad, and sometimes putting all the financing together can be difficult because of immigration status. International students can't work off campus, and so that can be something that creates a challenge. And then psychological difficulties. And I think this really came up with COVID. We've really seen this, that students have spent time being isolated on their own for several years, connecting only with screens. which is great in some ways because I'm able to connect with all of you, and you may be all in different countries, which is fantastic, but it also meant isolation for students. And so we're seeing that on campus, that students are facing psychological challenges as well. And that's just something to be aware of in the world that we live in. So doom and gloom, it's very challenging, but I have a smile on my face because I know that students are resilient and they do amazing things. And what really helps students succeed is self-efficacy. And so how can self-efficacy help students succeed? And why am I so excited about this topic from psychology? So self-efficacy comes from the field of psychology. And so self-efficacy was developed as an idea by a psychologist named Alfred Bandura. And he's been around for a long time. And he came up with this concept. In self-efficacy, it's a little bit different from confidence, but it's connected. It's one's belief in one's ability to succeed in specific situations or to accomplish a task. And so it's how you feel about yourself and how you're going to do. And that may be very different in different situations. So for example, I have high self-efficacy about presenting this webinar today. And I have high self-efficacy because I've done this before. I have presented many times. I've studied this topic. I've prepared. And so I've taken certain steps that give me the confidence. But if I was giving a webinar on physics, I would have very low self-efficacy. I would not feel good about how I could talk about physics to all of you because I am not a STEM person. I'm a liberal arts person. I'm a humanities person, an education person, and not STEM. So a person can have different levels of self-efficacy in different situations. And so what we want to do is promote self-efficacy in those areas of student success. And really, if you want to say it another way, if you think you can do it, then you're going to be able to do it. If you don't feel good about it and you don't think you can do it, you might not do a very good job. And so building confidence through skill building is what is so important. And research in psychology and education is showing that students with strong self-efficacy in academics, in career, and in social situations have better outcomes. So students will be more successful if they have strong self-efficacy. So that's why we're talking about this today. So in the social context, and I won't spend too much time on the literature, but I do want to make this point that this is based in research. So social efficacy. So remember I said self-efficacy is specific to different situations. So social efficacy is how you feel about your ability to make friends. And so very social people have strong social efficacy or social self-efficacy. And having good social skills and confidence in one's social skills correlates to mental health outcomes. So students who feel that they are good at making friends and building social connection have better mental health. They're happier and less stressed. The research also shows that students going to university, and this is all research on international students specifically, so I should make that point, that international students coming to the US who have strong social efficacy have a better acculturation. So transitioning, dealing with change, which we talked about earlier. Someone wrote that in the comments about how ability to adapt to change is important in the US university context. That's 100% true. And students with good social efficacy can handle those transitions better. They can weather the storm. They can face challenges. And then finally, in this final study by Tsai et al., they found that self-efficacy correlates with loneliness. So students that are less confident socially, are scared to make friends, are going to feel more lonely. And loneliness is a risk factor for psychological challenges, which can impact the experience at university. And so building good social efficacy and helping students feel confident in their ability to make friends and to build networks will help them be more successful in the social aspect of university. Okay, moving on to academics. So academic efficacy, the belief that one can do well in school, is also very important. And students that have that high self-efficacy are more confident in their ability to complete their degrees, to get through those 4 years, and to do well. Students' perceptions of themselves matter in their performance. And so students who perceive that they have a high academic ability, a high English language ability, that they are socially accepted and have financial stability, are more likely to be successful. So students need to feel good about what they're doing, know that they have the skills base to succeed in order to do so. And then finally, career efficacy, which is so important, right? We're preparing students for the world, right? For their careers. And studies are starting to show that having a high quality education experience abroad builds career efficacy and gives students the ability to find and succeed in their jobs. And that, so education abroad, going to the US for an international student, if they're taking advantage of all their opportunities, is going to build those skills of resiliency and self-confidence. And so we can see that when students are putting themselves out there, building their confidence, building their career efficacy, building resilience, then they are going to be more successful. And I would say not just at finding jobs in the US, but in having a career in a global economy, right? So Ruchira and I are on opposite sides of the world, but we work together to put this webinar together. Companies are global now. Students need global skills. So finally, based on their study of international students' confidence in their academic success, Telbus et al. Assert that international students' academic success is connected to their confidence in accessing campus resources. So that kind of ties in that other point on my slide about what universities are looking for, students that know how to access their resources. And so it will form a virtuous circle of a student knowing how to access the resources the resources, providing them with what they need to succeed. And so that's what we're looking for in the university context in the US, is to build this resiliency in students and to help them become part of the community, take advantage of everything that's being offered to them, and then we just get to watch them bloom. And that's, I think, why we are all in education, right? Because we want to see students succeed, to see them grow. It's so rewarding. And we can do that by fostering their internal belief in themselves, or their self-efficacy, in other words. So how can you, and I'm getting close here to be able to open it up to questions and discussion. So these are some ideas that I put together for how you can promote self-efficacy. So confidence is built by experience. So if I'm successful in trying something, then I'm going to be more likely to try it again. And you kind of start small and build up. So for example, last winter, I learned to ski. So it's about 95 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer in New England, but we get a lot of snow in the winter. And I wanted to learn how to ski. And I started, going down very short little hills. And so that was my goal. If I can just make it down this little hill without falling and killing myself, I'll be happy. And so that was sort of my short-term goal. And then gradually I started doing more and more difficult hills until by the end of the season, I could go to the top of the mountain and go down some of the difficult trails without falling, and I could keep up with my kids, which was my goal, because my kids are better skiers than me, and I wanted to be able to ski with my kids. And so that connects with specific short-term goal setting. So if you can help your student, maybe you have a student who says, I'm bad at math. Okay, well, you're not going to say, well, your goal, student, is to become good at math. No, let's learn the 5 times multiplication table, right? 5 times 1, 5 times 2, 5 times 3, a smaller goal. And you're the teacher, so you're going to be better at this. I don't work in the classroom as much, so I'm just trying to give some simple examples. But having those short-term goals, and then the student is like, oh, I can do 5 times 2. 5 times 2 is 10. I did it. I'm good at math. And that's building that internal self-efficacy so that they will be willing to try new and more challenging things. Okay, so specific short-term goal setting with students. Having students verbalize their learning plan. Okay, so how are you going to get from point A to point B? Help students actually plan and be involved in their own learning. So you don't necessarily tell them what their plan is. Maybe you say you have to get from A to B, but, Ruchira, how are you going to get there? What are your thoughts for how you're going to get there? Number 3, when possible, and it's not always possible, right? Because there are national exams, there are standards that you might have in the grades that you're teaching, but when you can, individualize assessment of student performance. So compare students to themselves. Last month you could do this, but now you can do even better. And look, I can show you the progress that you're making. And so when students can see that they are succeeding and they're performing better compared to themselves, that's going to build that self-efficacy. When possible, make room for student choice. So maybe there's an assessment of, maybe you're doing a unit on climate change. And so maybe you could let a student choose if they're going to write a paper on climate change, or if they're going to do a presentation And so maybe some students would prefer to write the paper because they want to sit and think about it and put everything together. But another student might want to put a PowerPoint together with some beautiful images and have a presentation at the front of the class. And so that's going to build their self-efficacy because they're going to feel like they were able to do something the way they wanted to do it and then do well at it because it's a way they want to do it. So build in choice when possible. It's not always possible. Leverage peers. So if a student sees someone similar to them doing well, they may feel that they can do well too. So getting students to work in groups together can be a really effective way to promote self-efficacy. Positive feedback, but not like, oh, you're a really good student. No, you could say, let's go back to the global warming the climate change presentation. You could say, the photos you chose were really, really excellent. I thank you. Your slides are very beautiful, but you didn't talk about increased rainfall. So you missed that. You needed to address that. You didn't put that in your presentation. So specific feedback so that students can grow, so they don't feel like, oh, I'm a terrible student, I didn't do it right. No. Here's what you did well, and then here are some specific things that you can change and improve in the future. Researchers are also seeing that collaborative activities can be really, really good for building self-efficacy. So, and that builds that teamwork requirement in the US university context. And so working those into your classroom when possible is really great. And then incorporating students' interests. So maybe the requirement is a research paper. So everybody has to write the paper, whether they like to write or not, but you let them pick their topic so they can get excited about something that they want to talk about. So that kind of connects with student choice too, building in their interests when possible. And so I think, and then this isn't on here, but another thing I think that's important too is for us as educators to be building our self-efficacy, which I think you're all doing by participating in this Schminley webinar. It's a way to build your knowledge base and increase your skills. And I think Schminley also offers sort of other ways for you to do this through their curriculum and their programs where you can build skills which will build your confidence in yourself and also in your ability to support your students and help them get to where they want to go. And so that's really it for today. I think this is just so important that we work on building self-efficacy in our students. And that is really the end of my presentation. So I think we have about 10-15 minutes to have a conversation. And I see, okay, great. There's a couple comments in the chat maybe we could start with and then go from there. And so if you have questions, I think you can put them in the chat and I can address them, or open to having you unmute yourselves and participate that way as well. I'm open to both, but before we get started on that, there's just a few things I see here in the chat. GOT is asking if I can explain a bit more about office hours. That's great. So office hours are a requirement for university professors in the United States. So every professor in the United States has to have time every week where they are in their office. Sometimes that's on Zoom now, but where they are available for any student to stop by and ask questions. And so that's a really important piece of the learning environment in the US university context, is that students can get access to their professors outside of class. And so you can go, you can ask questions if you don't understand a homework assignment, or you can just go to chat about anything. And when I am coaching students, I always tell them, go to office hours. Even if you don't have a question, go and build that relationship, because that's so important in the US context, is relationship building and getting to know your professors, because someday you may need that professor for a reference, for example, or you may just need someone to talk to about your career goals or what class you might want to take. So that's what office hours are. Great. What is the kind of support? Another great question from GOT. What is the kind of support the university provides in building social skills, especially for international students? Great question. So kind of how it works is social skills are built through participating in clubs. And so at every orientation, there's usually an activities fair where students can go and they can learn about all the different clubs on campus. So maybe the student newspaper, sports clubs, drama, STEM clubs, robotics clubs. And then that's kind of where students are getting to know each other and connecting around a topic that they are interested in. The other thing, and I can give a Clark specific example, for international students, we have an English language department, and part of what they do is teach English courses for students that are not quite ready to start their degree program, but they also offer workshops for all students. So for all international students, anyone who's an English language learner, and they do things around conversational English, things like that. Some universities will have language exchange programs where they'll match students who want to learn each other's language to get to know each other. So there's lots of different opportunities available. Okay. All right. So Farida says that I gather that social skills are equally important for success. They really, really are. You know, and it can be hard, you know. I know I'm talking a lot, but I definitely identify as an introvert. And so I've had to learn to put myself out there and to network in social environments. And it's not always easy, but it is a skill that you can build through practice. You know, you got to practice doing it. It's like exercising to build muscle. You have to talk to people to get better at social skills. And it's just kind of part of how it is. Okay, next question. BGR3. How to build self-efficacy in students suffering from ADHD? Ooh, that's a challenging one. So, and I am not an expert on ADHD, but I will share that one of my children has ADHD, and my husband has ADHD. So I have a lot of people in my life who have ADHD, and I have noticed that confidence building can be challenging because, you know, my daughter will say sometimes, my brain just doesn't work that way. Like I can't stop fidgeting, or I can't remember to do this, or I can't remember to do that. So with her, and she's younger, so we're not really at the college prep stage yet, but we work with her, we use lists. And so then that really helps her. So if she knows what she needs to do when we plan it out together, and then she can check everything off, that really helps. And then, you know, she's not getting upset at herself because she forgot to do her homework or she forgot to do her chores. And so that helps her. And then The other thing we do, because I have a couple of different kids. I have 4 kids, and one is like, some of them are very good with academics. My child with ADHD is not so academic, but she has really good social skills. And she's very athletic. And so she does gymnastics. And so we really support her in her gymnastics, in her social life, and having friendships, and sort of help boost the things that she's good at and her interests. So that's just sort of some very not professional commentary on students with ADHD. Okay. What is the most common problem you've observed among international students, specifically students coming from Asia? Okay. Great question. I think, so I actually had a very interesting conversation with a colleague who is based in India. He does our recruiting for Clark University in India. And he was on campus this week, and we were talking about Indian students and what their goals are and expectations. And I think there was a disconnect between sort of how US educators, what we think students should be focusing on, and then what students from India are thinking about. And so the social thing came up. Like, it was like, we offer all of these club activities, we offer career workshops, we offer this and that, and students don't come. And my colleague said that's because they're just very focused on getting their degree and then getting out there to get OPT, get the H-1B, and so maybe even the green card someday. So they're very focused on just that path. And I think the challenge is, for all international students, definitely our South Asia students, is sort of taking advantage of everything that's available in the US university system and learning kind of how it works in the US so that they can get the best experience possible and have success socially, academically, and professionally, which is what we want. And so I think that's a challenge. Another challenge I think that we've seen recently with international students is academic integrity. And so learning how to properly cite sources and not take other people's ideas, whether that's intentional or not intentional. So we do a lot of workshops now on academic integrity and how to cite properly, how to do research responsibly. So that's a big challenge too that we're seeing. Okay. Great. How much time do we have left? Okay.
I think we can take one more question, which Gayatri has put in, says, what is the role of parents in building self-efficacy?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think we can do a lot of these things at home too, with goal setting, with talking with our children about where they're going and how they're going to get there. I think, again, the specific feedback. So I really appreciate how much you studied for this test. Not like, oh, you're such a good student, right? Like really specific, like you did this well. But maybe next time you need to, follow your teacher's instructions about including this in your paper or this and that. So I think staying connected to what our kids are doing at school and supporting the teachers can really help with our children's growth. And then in the home life, setting up opportunities for them to succeed in those areas. Not probably career, they're a little young, but in building the rich social life, and doing well at school and engaging in all of their different activities that they're doing, and building them up. I think being cheerleaders, but realistic cheerleaders, so that we're helping them grow and giving them challenges that they can be successful at to build that confidence over time. Great.
Okay, yeah, great. I think there have been some wonderful comments about the session already. And thank you, Susan. I think you've been able to take us through certain ground level realities that we as educators must be aware of. You've, so beautifully put down things that what are the expectations and what role as educators could we play in supporting our students to go through and meet up those expectations. And for all the educators, the participants here, now that we know what is expected from our students beyond just scores and the kind of challenges that they face, we must sit back and reflect. Are we taking them? Are we facilitating them in the right direction? Are we providing them with enough opportunities to learn skills that they may need lifelong? It's not just skills in the classroom, it is building lifelong learners who are able to implement skills in decision making in facing any unfamiliar situations that they must come across. So I think let us sit back and reflect and see, do we have the self-efficacy to take our students in the right direction? And with this, thank you so much to all the participants. A big thanks to Susan for taking us through all of this. I see some applause for you already. And likewise from my end, from Shimali's end, thank you so much for all your time and effort that you put in today. We hope to meet you again soon on some other discussion like this that would help the educators across the globe. It was good to see people from different parts joining in. Teachers, in any case, you are looking for any sort of support to how to build in these skills into classroom activities, because skills, although should be taught explicitly, I believe they have to be implicitly a part of your curriculum. So in case you're looking for some sort of support, our email ID is right there. Susan, if you could move to the next screen, please.
Sure. Yeah.
You could reach out to us anytime, and let's have a discussion around it and see how can we support each other in this process. Thank you so much for this. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for hosting me. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.